Statement of Ann Porter regarding a test drive of an old pickup truck. Original statement given September 23, 2004. Audio recording by My Rosamelia, head archivist of the ROA Institute, Morris County. Statement begins. I could give the exact date for you. Easy. It was 1 year ago today, September 23rd, 2003. That date will be seared in my memory forever. And that says a lot, given I'm horrible with dates. I mean, I forgot my own dad's birthday a few years back. Not sure he forgives me yet. Sorry, I digress. This is just a difficult topic for me. But I guess I'm not here to waste your paper on me talking about how I forgot my dad's birthday. I've always been into old cars. Not owning them, really. I'm far from rich enough to have a collection, though I would like to one day. Well, not really anymore, but I shared this passion with my good friend Andrew. When we were kids, our plan was to save enough money to share a blue vintage Corvette, though we didn't really understand that we'd have to keep financing it like a half-dead fool on hospice. Anyways, we'd made a habit of going to dealerships and pretending like we were going to buy cars and then take them for test drives. Andrew knew a guy that was around 10 or 11 years older than us. I think it was a college friend of his older brother or something like that, so we'd bring him along with us. Dressed up all nice like some rich dad that was going to buy us the old thing for when we turned 17, and then we'd pay him $10 each for it. We'd put on our best behavior and nepo baby faces and watch the stupid salesman glow with delight over finally selling the piece of junk and making his fair share. We'd take it around town, Andrew and I, but the salesman always had to sit in the passenger seat, which was a pain in the ass. Andrew and I would take turns on who would be the one to get to drive it, though sometimes we were lucky enough to each get our own turn with one car. We'd tell the guy that we were twins, that's why. We'd be sharing it. Unless, of course, there were two cars in the lot that we liked. We would test both then. It was rare to find two vintage cars on the same lot, though. It was hard to find a lot with one to begin with, never mind a lot we hadn't already conned. We'd been all over our area and were starting to run sparse, but it was always our tradition to start off the school year like that, and last year was our senior year of high school, so we couldn't not find one. So, last year, we decided to look around one of the towns we hadn't been in and see if there were any dealerships that weren't on the map. New, maybe, or maybe just really old. Anyways, we'd had Andrew's mom drop us off on Main Street, Boonton, so we could go to the coffee shops. His mom wasn't keen on our hobby, so had to be inconspicuous. We walked around a lot, figured we'd have a good chance at finding something in Boonton, but if not, we'd check Morristown next, given how old both towns are. But it didn't seem like we were having much luck anyway. It was when we passed through Main Street again and were headed towards the reservoir that we actually found one. It was a really small place, looked like it had been a gas station once, or maybe that was next to it, pretty overgrown and reclaimed by nature, next to a small brick apartment building and jewelry shop. Though we were pretty sick of walking in this heat, it was like we were rejuvenated back to our starting energies when we saw this place. It was magnetic. You could see a few vintage cars in the front and a few they were working on in the back garage, all colorful ones, each their unique shape you just don't see anymore. Blue but rusted, red, sharp wood paneling, all were just beautiful. The one that stood out most was this red pickup truck. It looked like it was from the 70s, maybe, had a white but now tan leather interior, just two front seats, and a large back that had some scattered dead leaves inside. I could have sworn it was glowing despite the matte rust that caked it. Maybe it was just the heat. I mean, the pavement looked like it was boiling in ripples, but knowing what I know now, maybe it was glowing. In any case, Andrew and I knew that was the one that we wanted to drive. We figured we couldn't drive it now, but we wanted to get a good look at it before we called Andrew's friend to tell him about it, so he could do the whole dad skit. That was just when, however, I noticed a man sitting on the phone inside the little shop. He was sort of scrawny, not much of the beer belly you'd expect from someone who must have been in their 60s, tightly mustached with slicked back dark hair. I remember thinking he was kind of sketchy at the time, but before I could make up my mind on how I felt about the guy, he already came over to us. He made a comment about the truck, something along the lines of, "Beautiful, isn't it?" It was. Him and Andrew exchanged dialogue over how old it was, the make, the model, things of the like. Then he said something unexpected. "Did you two want to take it for a drive?" Our eyes swelled with excitement. We wouldn't need Andrew's weird friend after all. The heat must have been clouding our judgments. There was no trepidation, no question on why he'd let two wandering kids drive the thing. Stupid, really. The guy sauntered back into the garage. I remember how he walked, like a drunken waltz almost, a dance, pointing his fingers and crossing his steps. That was when he came back with the keys and opened the driver's seat with a gentlemanly bow, so I looked at Andrew. Your turn to drive, right? He nodded with pride, the man laughed, and we got in our respective seats. They were vintage soft, even if a little bumpy in places. Admirably soft, though. As the guy closed the door, I was looking over Andrew's shoulder at him. The dealer said, "Come back in one piece, yeah?" I remember finding this a little off-putting, but laughed anyway when I got in, though I had to readjust how I was sitting because something poked me. I lifted the back of my shirt and saw a bunch of little pricks, which pissed me off because I couldn't find anything on the seat, and the guy didn't warn me or anything. Andrew put the thing in gear, and we were off, very proud to show off how we could drive stick shift. The smell in there wasn't like any other vintage car I had known. It kind of started to make me carsick, so I rolled down the windows. All you could smell were the seats and the rust. It was overwhelmingly like iron and leather, but I chalked it up to this thing having been baking in the sun, presumably untouched all summer. I hung my arm out the window, and we drove down the Reservoirs Bridge, down straight past the gas station and into the woods, rather than rearing right towards the highway. The drive was smooth, beautiful. As cliché as it sounds, the wind was in our hair, our egos swollen on good luck, and we felt invincible. We drove around for about half an hour like this before realizing that the setting sun meant we were meant to be back by now for his mom to pick us up. When I pointed this out, Andrew cursed under his breath and looked around. It was a one-way road. He put the car in park and went to step out, but he hesitated. The engine hummed its old, distorted murmur as I watched his face, his brows furrowed. Then he just suggested we kept going forward. Said he had a bad feeling about going anywhere else, that he was sure there was a way back up ahead. I tried to argue with him, but I sort of felt like there was too. So we kept on. It was getting darker now. I was getting anxious, but I couldn't beat this hope that there was something just up ahead, that we were just on the cusp of turning around. But it was scary. I mean, hell, we were driving through the woods in the dark in the middle of nowhere for God knows how long. I sat back in the seat and remember feeling comforted by its cushioning. It was enveloping. That was when I first saw it. I saw a person in the rearview mirror and snapped my head back to check. Nothing. Andrew took notice to my alarm, but I told him it was nothing. But in just a few moments, he jerked back his head too. I would have yelled at him about keeping his eyes on the road, but he said he saw a person. Then I saw another one. It would just be a mailbox or a tree, but mailbox. We both stared at it as we drove by. What the hell was a mailbox doing out here? Where the hell were we? Andrew started to speed up and rolled up his windows, but the smell was still making me sick, so I kept mine down as the wind unequally swirled around the inside of the car. There were more and more people out of the corner of our eyes. Not just people, but animals, like deer, raccoons. Sometimes we even saw whole houses. I could have sworn we drove past a sign that said Wisconsin, which made absolutely no sense. I leaned back further into the seat, eyes darting back and forth between the side mirror and out the window. But I realized there was no way these seats were so deep. I could hear the sound of leather stretching, so I looked around and saw I had completely sunk in. It was bubbling underneath, curling in over the seatbelt buckle, which was digging into my side, over my shoulders, soon my ears. I was about to scream when I heard a muffled one to my side, competing with the gurgling engine. When I looked over, there was the shape of Andrew. The hot, dirty, white leather had completely swallowed him, his hand just futile in its desperate grip on the steering wheel. Just one eye was visible out of the gurgling mass. It's burned into my mind. I've never seen fear like that. The kind of fear that halts you, that freezes you no matter the temperature. It was the fear that screams, I don't want to die, but we both know I'm going to, don't we? Then it was gone. Like an eyelid, it stole the last of him, swallowed up, swathed, screaming. I couldn't move. Between that look and the leather caving in around my neck, I couldn't do anything. I was going to die. As I looked forward, I saw something up ahead in the road. It wasn't gone when I looked at it this time. It was a deer. We were approaching it fast. The last thing I remember was seeing Andrew's gaze one more time in that thing, lit by those blaring headlights, then glass shattering. Blackness. I don't know how long it was. It was still night, so it couldn't have been long. The searing pain in my head woke me up. My ears were ringing, and my body ached like it never had before. When I pushed myself up from the ground just enough to see what was ahead of me, I saw the car. Broken glass was scattered across the hood, leading a path to me. We were fully in the woods now, though. No more road. We, as in the car and I. Andrew wasn't in the driver's seat anymore. Just that dirty white leather morphed back like nothing happened. As I sat up, trying to understand if I were dreaming or not, I watched the front window. The car groaned and creaked, and slowly, just before me, I watched as the glass crept back across the frame. The car heeled. As ashamed as I am to say it, I ran. I ran and left Andrew in there to digest. I ran and I cried and I tried to wake up, but the pain in my head told me it was real. When I was out of the woods, I was on a residential street. Some neighbors saw me and called my mom. I was hospitalized. Andrew was declared missing. They chalked it up to weed. Can you believe that? Weed? I don't know if you can do anything. I want to storm back in there and burn that dealership to the ground. I haven't gone back to Putin, though. Also, safe to say I ride my bike everywhere now. But I swear, sometimes I see that red truck parked outside of my house, outside the school, doctor's appointments. Maybe it decided it was full then, but I don't think it's full anymore. Statement ends. Though it sounds heavily inspired by a Stephen King novel, which I can't remember the name of at this moment, we were able to verify some details of the statement. Nostalgia Motors Incorporated is still open for business in Boonton, a vintage car dealership just a few blocks from the reservoir on William Street. However, over the bridge, there is no street that goes forward past that gas station. It's a dead end, just trees. Calling the place produces no answers, unfortunately. It just rings until voicemail. The alleged owner of the shop is a man named Ringo Alejo, though little can be found on him. Leo went to see the place and actually talked to him, though. Alejo asked if Leo wanted to drive anything, and he very quickly declined. He told me that after that, Alejo's demeanor changed and was not as inclined to entertain a conversation. So, not much achieved there, but meeting someone in a follow-up is rare. Further investigation is required. Additionally, I can't help but notice the connections to a rumored old pickup truck in Heritage Forest down East Fairchild around where the high school is. I especially can't ignore it because I used to go there myself as a child. If you manage to get through the overgrown bushes and thorns, which are unforgiving to a stuck child with flaky friends, and past the clearing with the data towers, there is, in fact, an old, rusted red pickup truck with white leather seats. Though I remember vividly that they were crawling with termites, which makes me hesitant to attempt to return given recent events. In any case, I drove by yesterday, and just there, parked on the street, was an old blue Corvette. It's safe to say I left quickly. An attempt to follow up with Miss Porter proved unsuccessful. It seems she unfortunately died of an accident in her dream car just a year after giving the statement. On a video call with a friend at the time of the accident, they explained that she was looking at the rearview mirror and said, "Andrew," before hitting a deer. So, recording ends. Supplemental. I brought Leo, Cecile, and Katrina out to accompany me, and the truck was gone. I've talked to my brother to corroborate its existence, make sure I'm not going crazy, and he agreed it was there. Though we did get a little turned around, I'm sure we checked to the spot where it was. I was ready to take the whole thing back to artifact storage. There is no reasonable explanation for its removal. It's like there's always someone or something just one step ahead of me. Come in. Eleanor?
Are you busy?
No.
Good. Can I speak with you for a minute?